The basic rules of fighter versus fighter combat are: do not double mission, just be on air superiority, unless the enemy has bombers in the air zone, in which case you should be on interception. Every fighter wing must be fully trained before any combat. You should train air wings to the max level by shift-clicking aircraft exercises. This will make your planes automatically stop training once they reach the max experience level. Do not fight more planes with less planes. This causes your trades to be significantly worse. And you should not take bad trades unless there's a strategic reason that explicitly demands this. Such a reason would usually have something to do with short battles for valuable targets, like the Axis pushing out D-Day or naval invading Gibraltar. One of the most important mechanics to consider in air combat is air efficiency. It is determined by the average coverage of the air zone, the airfield supply, and the weather. Efficiency takes approximately 5 days to build up to max efficiency once an aircraft starts flying in a new zone or from a new airport. So do not move around air unnecessarily. The air efficiency percentage amounts to the percentage of your planes actually conducting missions in the air zone. For example, if 10,000 fighters are over an air zone with 60% efficiency on air superiority, you only effectively fight with 6k fighters. Air detection affects the percentage of enemy assets that can be targeted by you. This includes enemy planes and ships, and it's very important for naval bombers and anti-submarine warfare. It is affected by the number of planes in the air zone, the radar, and the weather. In practice, for high coverage air zones, more than 1,000 fighters give effectively saturated air detection. For large sea zones, some radar coverage is highly desirable. This is also why you want to concentrate all naval bombers in one sea zone against submarines, and why you want to put fighters on air superiority over that air zone, to increase air detection whenever possible. Path interception is another important mechanic. Your aircraft can be shot down by enemy fighters flying into the air zone you take off from, or any air zone your aircraft passes through, by the means of path interception. Therefore, make sure you are always checking all air zones you are passing through / taking off from, to make sure they are clear of enemy fighters. If there are enemy fighters path intercepting you in them, you must react quickly by putting at least as many fighters into that air zone. You can also use this mechanic yourself to defend against superior fighter counts by trying to do path interception and avoiding direct fighter trades. Daytime / nighttime flying allows your planes to only fight at night or day. This can be quite useful if you design a strategic bomber with modules that boost nighttime bombing specifically. Otherwise, this is usually only done by the Axis to save some fuel. Strategic bombing prioritizes closer target states more than further away target states. In practice, to effectively bomb an air zone, spread out bombers to come from various directions if possible. If you are the air controller in an MP lobby and you want to harass your enemies by the means of bombing, then it's also important to know about flicker bombing. Although it is often banned, the principle of it is to often and quickly change the air zones you are bombing before letting the enemy react to it. When deploying planes, you can select reinforcement priorities for your air wings. You can choose between reserve, regular, elite, and specialized air wings, with only the latter one typically being used. You should always specialize your air wings if you produce the planes of the same type for different roles. Typically, in an MP game, this would be the case for heavy fighters and naval bombers, which, if optimally designed, both count as large fighter air wings. Making the air wings specialized while deploying the planes prevents those air wings from mixing. Alright, first of all, let's talk about fighter designs. In an MP game, everyone other than the US does light fighters. Generally, your weapon slots should be filled with 4 times heavy MGs, and you want the newest but cheapest engine possible on your plane. Engine 3 is generally required to build any somewhat decent plane in MP, but once you have it, upgrading to Engine 4 is absolutely matter. Note that Fighter 2s are better until Engine 4 has been researched due to the extra thrust, allowing you to make a better design. Therefore, in MP, it's usually not worth it to bother with Fighter 3. Anyways, your bottom modules are largely dependent on the MIO you have. The range MIO is usually the best, although not all countries have it available. Either way, self-sealing fuel tanks are a must-have, and afterwards, depending on your range and armor needs, you would want to go for either 1 extra fuel tank plus 1 armor plate, or just 2 armor plates. As Japan, you should do carrier fighter due to the crazy production modifiers you have on them, and just downgrade 1 machine gun. In vanilla, the US does heavy fighters. This is due to the insane research buffs you have for them, which enable you to do or to research heavy fighter freeze incredibly fast. And due to the allies having the issue of being airport capped on D-Day and in some other areas, in many proper MP lobbies, especially if the Axis and allies go very high on air, yeah, that makes heavy fighters a lot better as well, since they offer more air superiority per plane as well. In 1936 or your early game, the 1936 planes are generally just useful for single player, because in multiplayer you can rush the air relatively easily, and then Fighter 2s just outtrade Fighter 1s really badly. So it's not really worth it to go for 1936 planes, but for your single player campaigns, I would just prioritize cannons for your early planes. Anyhow, for your navs, you want to use heavy fighters, since small airframes can't stack two naval modules or 2 modules with naval attack, or at least only one of them counts then for your naval attack, which makes them completely unviable. And large airframes are expensive, and they only stack in stacks of 10s, which makes them weird to play with. So I just recommend going for the medium airframe for your navs. For your CAS, ground attack is king, but you need to keep the costs down. Generally, just go for bomb blocks, and then once you have the research, upgrade to heavy bomb blocks. If you don't expect your enemies to use air, consider using the strategic resource module to save some production costs. This would usually be the case for Axis Barb CAS, but I would imagine you can also use it at other fronts. Just whenever your enemy is not expected to have any air to meaningfully shoot down your CAS, it's definitely worth going for. Okay, anyhow, your strats are just there to get as much strat bombing as possible. So just stack the module in a way that allows you to get a good strat bombing to IC ratio. Now let's come to the doctrine. For doctrine, you always want to go for the left side. It offers almost the same bonuses as the right doctrine, but it offers more air superiority than the right doctrine. And one of the most important and common mistakes new MP players do is that they ignore air doctrine because they don't control planes. This is technically not important for the air guide, but I still want to mention it. It is critical to go for the middle air doctrine as a nation that doesn't control planes, but fights under green or yellow air, since the ground support modifiers and they work on a battle basis, meaning that you will get a lot more stats by going the middle doctrine even if you're not actually controlling the air, but just fighting in the battles under under green or yellow air with CAS. It will increase the ground support modifier, and it's definitely useful to keep that in mind. In MP, you generally always want a single nation, which is the specific air controller for your team. Everyone land leases all of their planes to the AC, also called air controller, and he controls them for you. This not only enables everyone but the AC to go for a middle air doctrine, it also frees up micro and makes things like allocating fuel efficiently better. The AC on the allied side, if allowed, should always be Brazil. Gets incredibly busted air modifiers, and if Brazil AC is allowed, air is basically an immediate win for the allies. If not, just go for Canada AC. For the Axis, the AC should be either Germany or Italy, with Germany being slightly better if the Axis actually go for an quote-unquote air gamble. That means putting most mills onto air and declaring Barbarossa late. Otherwise, Italy is better. That is because for Germany to be the better AC, they have to do most of their air forestry, which they are better off just skipping out on in case they don't air gamble. If you play a low air game as Axis, you need air just for, or green air, you just need for Barb and to counter allied bombing. On a side note, in pure vanilla, bombing is absolutely overpowered, and you should always go for it as early as possible as the allies. If you can bomb German rubber rifts, do that as well. They die really easily, and it just essentially destroys the capability for the Axis to reduce anything which could enable them to defend against you. As allies, you will need green air for Egypt, Rush, and D-Day, so you always need to be higher on air than the Axis. Make sure that is your absolute priority, and that needs to be fulfilled before anything else.